I don't want you to spend a lot of money or a lot of time on thinking about your budget. I don't want you to spend countless hours digging in spreadsheets. I don't want you to do any of that stuff because I want you to focus on the higher level activities, your family, making more income, whatever your goals are. And I do want your focus there.
You're listening to Flip Empire, the show committed to helping real estate entrepreneurs who want to build their empire without sacrificing their life. Your success and freedom starts now with your host, Alex Pardo.
On today's podcast, I am interviewing my new friend, Brennan Schlagbaum, founder of Budget Dog and Budget Dog Academy, whose goal is to reinvent the normal and allow everybody to see the path to financial freedom. So, my friends, you are in for a treat on today's podcast because we are going to be talking about all things personal finance. Brennan and his wife, when they got married, when they started a family, they started life with about over $300,000 in debt. And by coming up with a very specific plan, not only was he able to pay off all that debt, but their net worth has ballooned to multiple seven figures. And on today's podcast, we're going to be talking about how you can identify your freedom number, establishing your why, the importance of budgeting, and it's not what you think, the importance of tracking your net worth, having a debt schedule so that you can consistently and automatically pay down your debt, and then how we can automate our finances and automate our investing based on the specific plan that we have. So we cover a lot of practical steps, a lot of how-to, and I believe you're going to get a lot of value out of today's podcast here. So before we get going, I want to make sure that I mention this. Many of you have been reaching out to me about finding your first self-storage facility, cash flowing storage facility within the next 6 to 12 months without having to use your money or needing any experience. So whether you're a seasoned, active, single family real estate investor, or you have a 9-to-5 and you're looking to jump and skip the line, right? Just go straight into commercial and storage facilities and specific, head over to www.storagewins.com and apply. If I like what you have to say, I'll invite you on a call so we can discuss. So www.storagewins.com. With that being said, let's hop into episode 745 with my friend Brennan from Budget Dog. Welcome back, my friends. This is Alex Pardo, and I am back with another masterclass on the Flip Empire Show. Guys, this is crazy. I want to say this is episode 745, I believe it is, give or take. And all these episodes, I can't recall the last time I had an expert on here that I was so looking forward to interviewing on a particular topic and subject that we have not covered in a long, long time. We're talking about personal finances. So I got my good friend Brennan on the podcast here from Budget Dog, and we're going to be talking about so many things that are going to be applicable no matter where you are in your real estate journey. If you have businesses outside of real estate, you're an active real estate investor, regardless of where you are in your journey, getting started, making some money, you've scaled and exit companies and businesses and you're back at it. Whatever it is, personal finances is so critical to your overall success and to freedom, right? Like Brennan and I have talked to so many entrepreneurs throughout the years, and ultimately what people I find really want, in my opinion, is they want freedom. They want options. And Brennan has created an incredible community at budgetdog.com, Budget Dog Academy, and we're going to go ahead and shout them out right off the get-go. But I want to go ahead and dive into this conversation. So Brennan, brother, thank you for being on the podcast, man. I'm excited and eager to learn along with the audience because just the content you put out on social media and some of our conversations, man, I've just really enjoyed and love the financial education you're providing for people free and inside of your community as well. So thank you, brother.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me today, and you're setting the bar high, so I got to make sure I perform for your people.
You're good, man. Just do what you do, man. But yeah, so why don't we start here? Instead of kind of getting into your background and your backstory, which is important, but I kind of touched on some of that in the intro, I want to really just provide as much valuable content to people listening, right? So you and I were talking before we started recording the podcast that a lot of people that listen to this show are active, in many cases, full-time real estate investors. They're making some money. In some cases, people are just getting started. And there's other cases where people have been at this for years. But a lot of people I talk to, man, feel like they're on a hamster wheel, right? They're making money, but they're chasing deals. They're going after the next real estate transaction. And oftentimes the people I talk to, it feels like they're in a grind. Like instead of it being a season of hustle, it's like the lifestyle is hustle, right? So why don't we start general broad, and then we can start to kind of like narrow down and zoom in on the conversation. But what is the first thing that you would suggest and recommend that real estate investors and entrepreneurs in generals, how do they need to think about their personal finances?
Yeah, that's such a great question to start off. And I think it has to come down to a specific number. And when you know your number, things get a lot easier. You can hone in on that number and you can build around that number and actually accomplish that number. And so it's like any goal setting exercise. The very first thing you got to do is, why are you doing what you're doing? And what is that goal that you're trying to accomplish? Once you know that, now we can we have our sights set on exactly what we're trying to accomplish. We have our sights set on exactly the number that we need. And that number is going to provide us the amount or the let's call it the lifestyle that we need or we want.
Yeah.
Once we know that, it takes not a whole lot of effort to create the rest. Now, there's some expertise involved if you've never done something like this. But if you are just starting out, you need to define what that amount is that you need to live on. Maybe it's a monthly basis number. Maybe you annualize it times 25 as your FI number. Whatever that number is specifically for you, figure out what that is. And also not just like a number just to have a number, but why do you want that? Yeah. And I think the why is super powerful. And I think a lot of people are running on the hamster wheel because they don't know their number or why they're doing what they're doing. They're just like, well, I got to make more money because I got to make more money. Because I got to make more money.
But why?
And it's like, well, why? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, this is a great example. I had a buddy in business. He's doing multiple millions of dollars. And he's like, I got to scale. And I'm like, okay, there's nothing wrong with scaling a business. There's nothing wrong with growing. But what are you trying to do? What's your reason? He's like, well, dude, because I got to scale. I'm like, you're doing multiple millions of dollars. Would that not provide the exact lifestyle that you need or want? He's like, I mean, it does, but I got to scale. I'm like, okay, well, you're so focused on, and you're such on a hamster wheel right now because you're always going to scale. You're always going to hit 10 million, then 100 million, then a billion, and whatever the number is, it's just going to be another number. It's infinite. And so until you know the why and the exact number, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, man, it's so true. And I was kind of smiling as you were telling you the story about your buddy just wanting to scale, but not really having a good reason. And to your point, there's absolutely nothing wrong with scaling. But dude, I remember back in 2018, I joined the high level mastermind and everybody there, the buzzword was scale. And all of a sudden, 12 months later, I had grown my team to 8-9 people. I had overhead of 40, 45 grand. And I looked and I'm like, well, I scaled, but I have less freedom. Like, I feel like now I'm trapped in this like business that I have to feed. And I'm like, my margins are less. I'm working more. It's like, this isn't why I got into this, right? So again, nothing wrong with scaling. We're not demonizing that. But like, to Brennan's point, like, why do you want to do something, right? So don't just like fall victim to looking on social media, looking at the people in the different communities you're in and saying, oh, because they're doing that, I need to do that. Because the truth of the matter is, and Brennan, you know this better than most, like, we don't know what's really going on behind the scenes, right? Like, we just see like what's on the outside. And then oftentimes we see people make decisions based on that, but it doesn't really resonate with them deep down inside.
It's interesting. I actually think there's a lot of people that make a lot of money, more money than I would have ever even imagined in my life, with the space I'm in now, that are extremely unhappy. And they're always like trying to get that next goal. And it's hard. I think a high achiever really struggles with this the most. Is like they hit a goal and they're like, okay, what's next? And they hit a goal and they say, what's next? And it's just an ever-ending cycle if you're not careful. And it's okay to be a high achiever. And I'm a high achiever myself. I know you are. There's a lot of people out there listening to this that are high achievers. But make sure like you have an end goal in mind. Yeah. And when you hit that end goal, feel confident, like feel good that you've gotten there. And like, if you want to set your sights higher, that's okay. But be careful with the moving goalpost.
That's right.
That's always a scary world to be in, because there's a lot of people that drain themselves, their energy with time, because nothing's ever going to be good enough no matter what level they're at. And like, you can say like, oh, this number I'll be good. I'll be good when I make $10 million a year, which is crazy to even say. People say that. I'll be good when I make $100 million a year. But you'd be surprised when you hit that number, what it feels like, and that you need more. It's like a dopamine, reactor. And you need that more dopamine more than the number. And when you understand how humans are wired, it's a very interesting, psychological concept.
Yeah. I want to encourage everybody listening to rewind a couple of minutes and listen to what Brennan just shared, because there's so much wisdom in that. We're always going to move the goalpost. A mentor of mine told me years ago, and you may or may not agree with this, but he says, you got to learn to like places much value on the journey, what you're learning, who you're becoming on your way to a particular goal. Because once you achieve the goal, it feels good, but it's kind of like that new car smell. And it always stuck with me, dude. It's like, yes, we want that, but then it's like that shiny new watch you buy or the car or the home. It's like you still appreciate it later, but it doesn't quite have that feeling when you first get it. So figure out a way to really enjoy what you're becoming, who you're becoming, the skills you're acquiring in the process, and hopefully the people's lives that you're impacting. Because when you talk about why, at least for me, dude, like when I know that I'm having a positive impact on someone's life, like that's what's deeply rooted in me. The money we make, the accomplishment, it's great. We all want that, right? But it's fleeting. It's here and then it's gone. And then like we're on to the next thing, right?
There's so much to unpack there. Like it's such a good topic, because last night my wife and I were talking about this. We're like, by all means, we've accomplished and checked the box to a lot of the things that people aim for their whole life. And we've done a tremendous job of doing so. We're beyond thrilled that we've been able to do it. We're grateful for where we're at. But like we talked about last night, the journey in like becoming who you want to become and seeing that journey and that process, falling in love with the process, like, Michael Jordan would say, is so much more gratifying. And like, I even told her last night, even when you're going through the struggle, even when it kind of stinks, it's actually very rewarding and actually really, really fun to be part of. And I like it. And it's hilarious because like I remember a couple years ago, I was like, okay, when we hit this number, when we hit this number, when we do this, when we do that, this can be great. Like by all means, like we've done all that. And it's every single time we hit those like goals or those mountaintops, it's like, okay, what's next? Or that's not as exciting as I expected.
Yeah.
Like that feeling wasn't what I expected. Like it's good, but I expected to be there. So it wasn't like a surprise. And I think a lot of times, I said this last night, that the people that really work hard, the high achievers, they understand this because they've experienced this multiple times. They've hit the goal they wanted to hit. And they're like, wait, I was expecting a way bigger feeling.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, now it's becoming about the process, and they fall in love with that process because they're a high achiever and they continue to do that. But the individual that doesn't ever want to work hard, and this is a call out to everybody that thinks that success is easy, and they see that success, the top of the let's call it the iceberg, they're like, that would feel so good, because they're not thinking of all the process and all that in between crap that you have to go through to get that. And the mindset shift to get there, to win that game or get that goal. Because when you shift your mindset, the way you think about that goal changes, and the expectation becomes, I'm going to do it, just a matter of time. And so it doesn't have as big of a let's call it a dopamine effect when you actually hit the goal, as the individual that's looking on the sideline that hasn't done any work, that has the mindset of a beginner. Yeah. And that's a seriously powerful concept. And I've noticed this a lot of times with myself. Like I can make any dollar amount at this point in time, and it really doesn't get me up. Like I'll be honest, like I'll wake up to a very nice payout, right, from my business, but it doesn't really excite me. Like it really doesn't at this point in time. I've done the money thing. I've been able to accomplish what I need from there. But when I see a student win in the morning, like that's my caffeine. When I see multiple student wins, whether it be paying off debt, whether it be investing a ton of money, whether it be hitting millionaire status, whatever that is, or just general sense of fulfillment and feeling great with them, that is the best feeling. Like, and that doesn't get old. That's actually something that doesn't get old. I don't ever feel like, oh, I'm kind of numb to this like excitement. Right. I always get excited because there's always somebody new that you get over a hump, and it feels just as good as the first time, and the second time, and third time. And I love that feeling. I love being able to see people's lives change right in front of my eyes. But like a dollar amount, like if I made $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, whatever the case is, like it really doesn't do much. Like it's like, okay, cool. It's like my lifestyle is not going to change. I'm a pretty basic guy. Live in a normal house, drive a normal car. My wife and I have a pretty normal average lifestyle. Could we have more? Sure, absolutely. But does it really drive us or do anything for us? Not at all.
Yeah. I love it, man. This is just one of the many reasons I think you and I, when we first met and my cousin introduced us late last year. Yeah, dude. Shout out to Joss, man. She's awesome. So we connected and we just bonded, man. We had a lot in common. And this is just one of the reasons why I think we have a very similar mindset. I want to circle back to the number, right? So because I do want to ask you a few more questions about now how people can start to create. You talk a lot about in your community about creating an automated financial plan, right? One that is aligned with the person's number. Before we go there, Brennan, when you talk about picking the number, should people pick a number based on the lifestyle they're currently living, or should they pick a number based on the lifestyle they want to live?
Lifestyle that they want to live.
Okay.
And it's a pretty simple math equation, and it's not a perfect science. There's some, obviously you like anything, it depends and stuff like that. But I think the biggest thing is figuring out what that monthly lifestyle potential is. Like if you want to live a lifestyle of $5,000 a month, take 5,000 times it by 12, annualize it. That's 60,000. 60,000 times 25 would put you at 1.5 million. And that would be quick and simple, dirty math. Like obviously there's more to it and stuff like that. But that would be a starting point. Okay, I need 1.5 million. That's my goal of financial freedom numbers. And again, there's way more to it. We can deep dive a little more, but that would be the initial starting point. But it's definitely a monthly amount that you want to live at, because it's about when you get to that place that's the lifestyle that you're able to live. Current lifestyle is not really that meaningful.
Okay. Well, why don't we do this for whatever reason? And I don't know, you tell me if you hear a different number, but if I had to pick the average number, when I ask people like, hey, what's the amount of money that you want to earn monthly? I hear 20, 30, 40, 50,000 a month, and I hear less, right? For whatever reason, 10, 12,000 a month seems to be, generally speaking, I think a pretty good sweet spot. So using your basic math, I think that's $3 million bucks, right? If you said $5,000, so annualize it 60, multiply it times 25, that gives you 1.5. If people wanted 10 grand a month, let's just use that as an example. That's $3 million bucks. Okay. So for people listening, and whatever your number is, guys, just do the quick math, right? But we're just going to use $10,000 a month as a simple example. That's $3 million bucks that people need. Now that they have that number, Brennan, like what is the next step?
Yeah, great question. So I'm actually doing math because I'm not that smart on the fly. And this is another testament, guys. If you guys want to become wealthy, you don't have to be a genius.
and I'm certainly no genius, far from it. So I'll put that out there.
Well, also depends on your timeline. So define your timeline. When do you want to become financially free? When do you want to hit this specific number? I'm going to give you a quick math example that I actually put up on the screen myself to be able to do this on the fly. But let's assume a few things. So let's assume you're starting at zero. Let's assume that you decided, hey, I'm 30 years old, I'm 35, whatever the case is. I want to be financially free at 50 or 55. So 20 years from that date.
Okay.
And let's assume a historical market return of 10%. Now, that's not a guarantee. None of those assumptions are like, they might not be your assumptions, but these are what we're going to do for the sake of this conversation. So your monthly contribution needs to be $4,500 a month based on that math. $4,500 a month starting at zero for 20 years, earning 10% average annual returns would be a little over $3 million.
Okay.
That is the second step to this equation, defining your timeline, understanding what that contribution would be, I guess, step three. And so you have the exact number, you have the exact timeline, and you have the exact actual number that you have to contribute on a monthly basis to really break it down simply to get to that ultimate big, hairy, scary number.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Got it. And when you talk about, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody listening or watching this, right? And they say, okay, I'm going to need to contribute $4,500 a month, right? Earning an average of 10% in order to, within 20 years, get to this number, right? There's going to be people thinking to themselves, well, man, if I could squeeze out an extra $4,500, that'd be great. To those people, what would you say? I know I have some thoughts that I want to kind of piggyback on whatever you share, but for people that are kind of paycheck to paycheck, right? Again, there's a lot of investors, Brennan, that do 2-3 deals a month, and then they might go a month or two without doing the next deal. And the money they made is feeding their family, maybe taking care of their team. And it's like this income roller coaster that they're on, right? What would you say for the people that are living paycheck to paycheck or maybe have a little bit of money left over, right? But they can't quite get to the $4,500 they need to eventually hit that number.
Yeah, two schools of thought here. So number one is understanding the financial roadmap that you need to put together. So this is where the actual plan itself is very important and the documents that go behind this. So number one is we need a budget. I know that sounds really simple, but it's the key to everything. It's the key to our cash flow. So understanding your ins and outs truly is number one. Number two, a balance sheet, making sure you know where you're at, your net worth, your score, let's say if you want to compare it to your weight that you're currently, how much you weigh as a person, that's your starting point, where you're at. Maybe I'm 200 pounds, I want to get to 210. I want to increase my weight by 10 pounds. Yep. I start at 200 pounds. That is my net worth, my score, my whatever you want to call it. The most important score, in my opinion, on a financial world. Number three is if I have debt, I need amortization schedules. So I need to map out every single one of my debts that I have. And so between those three documents, that's the key fundamental foundational structure right there. Now, how to work those documents interchangeably and together is going to be the next step of the puzzle. And understanding how those things work together is one of the most important feats that anybody could have in the personal finance world. Because what happens is that when you understand how these work together, things flow and they automate a lot nicer. And you actually have more money than you think. And I'm surprised that more people don't understand this key concept, but I'm going to put you guys on something right now that will change your life. And this might be the most basic thing. So do not take this for granted, but go do it. This is more an action step. Go do a 3-month look back analysis of what you've actually spent. And so I know that sounds really basic, but it's almost like looking in the mirror and saying, hey, who am I as a person? What have I done as a person? And admitting what I am and just calling myself out and, at face value. And so when you go back and look at your 3 months of spend, there's a lot, the emotional, the human brain's a very fascinating, a thing, so a lot of times what happens in our brain, we justify, we have biases, all sorts of different things as people. If you take that out and you just objectively look at the numbers on the screen, not your justification, not, hey, I wrote that one off in my head mentally because I don't want to remember it.
Yeah.
Just look at the actual numbers. You'll be amazed at what you actually spent. Now, once you actually know what you spent, now we can adjust and we can transform. And so when I know I spent so let's say $10,000 a month, and I was like, wow, this is a lot of, and I see what the breakdown of that is. And I'm like, wow, there's $1,000 a month I have late night spend in Amazon because I'm stressed out from work. Okay. You have way more cash flow than you actually are led to believe, but you haven't had that cash flow because you have a lifestyle and habits that are demanding the 10,000.
Yeah. Now
we get to another step deeper and we understand, okay, $10,000 is the reality. But like Amazon, okay, I can't just snap my fingers and $1,000 goes away. What do I have to do as a person to adjust that happening every single time? What stress levels do I need to reduce? What lifestyle changes do I need to make so that $1,000 like spur of the moment type of purchase late at night because I'm stressed goes away? Now that's an extra $1,000 per month, $12,000 per year. My average student will find an extra $24,000 per year. So an extra $2,000 per month through this exercise. And it's a simple exercise, but when people go through it, they're always amazed. Almost every single time they're amazed because it's objectively looking at the cold hard facts, which they've never done before. And a lot of people are scared and fearful to do so because it shows the reality. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. This is an emotional process. You got to gear up for it emotionally, but once you do it, your life will be a lot better.
Brennan, and to buffer your point, so my wife's in the other room and she can probably hear this, but about a year ago, man, we went through this exercise where we downloaded our last 3 months statements in Excel from Chase, right? And then we sorted by we sorted by all the debits and all the credits, and we actually looked at how much outflow we had, and we both looked at each other like, this is insane. Like, even, which I feel like I'm pretty fiscally responsible, even to us, we were like, we got to adjust some things here. We're spending how much on Amazon? We're spending how much on food? Like, this is ridiculous, right? And so I think everybody can benefit with that. But to your point, a lot of people, man, they want to keep their head in the sand because they're scared what the data might actually tell them. The problem is if you don't actually do what Brennan just suggested, like, how are you going to get ahead? And, that simple example of needing an extra $4,500 a month to invest at 10% interest to within 20 years, get to your number. Like, if Brennan's students on average are finding about half of that, like, that's just a simple exercise and then a decision to change some habits. And you're halfway there if you really think about it. Right.
Yeah. That's the first step. And then let's say, you typically don't start with zero. Like, you're typically doing something investing wise. Maybe you are, and there's no shame if that's the case. But if you aren't starting with zero, let's say you're starting with $1,200 and then you find an extra $2,400.
Yeah,
that puts you at a pretty nice advantage. Now, what's the gap what's to fill the gap? It's increasing income. And so there's no secret about that. And so what kind of side hustles can you do? What kind of 9-to-5 promotions can you get? What kind of focus points can you get to increase your income at that point to fill that gap? If there's a gap that needs to be filled, a lot of times there's actually not, which is kind of crazy. When a lot of times people come to the conclusion like, wow, I have everything I need. And that's a very comforting feeling. When you finally realize, I thought I didn't have enough money, and I realized I actually did. And usually within the academy, we help individuals that are making over 6 figures a year. So that could be gross household income as either a single individual or even a married filing joint person.
Yep.
Typically they have enough money. If you make over six figures, you typically have enough money, unless you have some outlandish idea of lifestyle or goal, or you want to become a billionaire or trillionaire in 3 years. You probably make enough money to accomplish most of the goals that are out there that I've heard. And so that's why we help that type of person. We know specifically who we can help, and that's why we get really good results.
I love it, dude. And there's so much power, right? There's a quote, and I'd love to give credit to whoever said it, right? But they said, maybe it was Tony Robbins, or they said, what you focus on expands, and what you track and measure grows. And so knowing your numbers, I think, Brennan, correct me if I'm wrong, you said, number one, a budget. Number two, your balance sheet, right? Like your net worth, assets and liabilities. And then number three, if you have debt, a debt schedule with an amortization, like knowing what you're actually paying over time, and then getting on a plan to remove the shackles. Because I'm sure you would agree, anybody that's got debt, especially bad debt out there, consumer debt, it's killing them. It's slowing them down.
Yes.
So man, let me dive into the budget thing, because I think there's some controversy, at least with the entrepreneurs in the ecosystem that I kind of roll in. I would imagine. So you're smiling.
I know the conversation here for sure. Let's talk about it.
So let's talk about budget, man, because I'm thinking of a couple people off the top of my head that I trust, respect, admire. They're at a certain level financially, and there's different schools of thought, right? Like you have the Dave Ramsey type of school of thought. Hey, get on a written budget. Every penny's got a name. You know exactly where it's going. Then I've talked to successful entrepreneurs that are like, man, I feel restricted with a budget. My solution is to just make more money. Like my brain power is better spent on generating more income than worrying about spending, a couple $100 a month on Starbucks or whatever, as an example. Give me your kind of school of thought and what's your framework for thinking about this?
So it's such a fun topic to talk about. I'm going to bring up my book, and I'm going to do a plug in my book, The Roadmap to Financial Freedom, A Millionaire's Guide to Building Automated Wealth. The reason I'm bringing this up, you don't have to spend countless hours. You don't have to be confused or restricted or whatever feeling out there around budgeting that you have to be successful. A lot of this stuff is automated. And so if you build something that takes 30 minutes a month, I can guarantee you are more focused, you are more streamlined, and you're more effective, and you have less thought on the actual finances themselves. And that is the whole entire premise behind my whole business model, behind my whole entire philosophy, is I don't want you to spend a lot of money or a lot of time on thinking about your budget. I don't want you to spend countless hours digging in spreadsheets. I don't want you to do any of that stuff, because I want you to focus on the higher level activities, your family, making more income, whatever your goals are. Mm-hmm. And I do want your focus there. But what if I told you could do both? And I think a lot of people don't believe it's either one or the other, and it's not like that at all. So what we do is build an automated financial system so that you are operating at a high level, and all you have to do is focus on your life or whatever you want to focus on. Most of my day is either building my business or focusing on my family. Those two things take like top level of my time.
Yeah.
All my finances, as much as we've done, they don't take any time. Like I don't spend any time on my finances. So people are like, well, how do you do that? Because don't you have to budget? Don't you have to do all these ththings? Yes, but you set up a system to basically do it for you in a sense. And you're more so a manager over your money, to where you're just assessing and seeing what's going on. Just like you would be we're talking to entrepreneurs. You own a business, you have employees potentially, or you're managing people or leveraging assets and stuff like that. It's the same concept. Yeah. And so you actually can do both, and you'll be more effective. And to think that a budget is restrictive is always funny to me, because I spend more money when I feel comfort of what's actually going out and coming in. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people think that because a budget means like cutting expenses and stopping. That's not a budget at all. That's just a made up terminology from the past. Maybe that's Dave Ramsey style. What a budget really is telling you where your income's going and what expenses you're spending your money on. And it's okay. There's no guilt or shame around that. It's aligning that with the lifestyle that you ideally want to live. And when you set that up automatically, you'll feel comfortable, you'll feel confident, and you'll be able to focus on other things like your income and like your family to be able to increase and live a very plentiful life.
Yeah. Well, man, I know this is something that is kind of foundational to your community, Budget Dog, and some of the things that you guys help your clients with. But for people that either choose to get involved with your community or not, and by the way, I think now feels like a good time to kind of plug. So if you guys want, I'm just bringing it up here. If you guys want to go to budgetdogacademy.com/path, you can actually claim a free personalized financial training. And Brennan, on there, I was on your page. You went from 300 plus grand in debt, I think it was, to net worth of over $1 million, correct?
Yes. We went from, what was it, negative $8,000 net worth at one point, which we had a ton of debt, 300,000, all the way up to about 2.6 million as we speak today.
Wow. Incredible, man. And you guys have
I've been there, guys. It's not like I'm sitting here, like I haven't had any financial struggles. I know the path so well because I lived it the hard way.
Yeah. Well, man, what begs the question for me as I was listening to you speak a little while ago is how do people start to automate their finances? I would venture to say, and I don't know, I'm guessing here, I could be off, but I would probably say 7, 8 out of 10 people listening, if not higher, don't have their finances automated, right? And they're investing automated. And part of it is because of what we've already talked about the first half hour of this podcast, which is, getting clear on your number, having a budget, tracking your net worth, like having a plan to get out of debt, et cetera. So once we've kind of gone through that, how do we start to set up and create automated systems that track our finances, do the investing for us based on, our numbers that are aligned with what we're after?
Yeah. So the first piece of the puzzle. So once we get past the budget, balance sheet, and amortization schedule, we next need to go to an actual road mapping of what we're trying to accomplish. Where does the next dollar go? And where does every dollar go? Once we decide what that is, now is the automation phase. So we decided the roadmap of exactly how we're going to go about. We calculate everything out. We know when our goals are going to hit, specifically when our debts are paid down, when our investment goals are going to be reached. Now we go in and automate that whole process. So this comes down to 3 main components of your finances. All of your bills need to be automated. All of your debt pay downs need to be automated, and all your investments need to be automated. So I know precisely based on the numbers that I looked at on the roadmap, on the budget, balance sheet, amortization schedule, what I need to hit all my goals.
Yep.
And that number is clearly defined. It's an objective. There's no subjectiveness to it. Once I have that number, I'm going to go into the portal, literally into your student loan portal, whatever the case is, and say, okay, this is going to take $1,500 a month to pay off. Boom, set the automation and be done with it and let it go, let it ride. Yeah. I need $2,500 to invest into my taxable brokerage to hit my X number goal by 45. Mm-hmm. So go into your automation, set the automation up, be done with it. All my bills, automate. Now we know everything's happening basically together automatically without us actually going in there and doing anything. But we have all of our financial statements, which is budget, balance sheet, amortization schedule, and also a clear roadmap already sitting here accounting for all that, telling us what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Now it's just an automation of beauty, like happening right before you. And you don't have to think about it. You don't have to change month to month. You don't have to do any of those things. And a lot of people are like, well, what if, life happens? And what if something pops up? Well, now we have a very clear plan. So number one, you have emergency funds. You have all the basics that kind of shield you and build a moat around your finances so that none of this stuff's impacted. Right. Because if you don't build that moat and all of a sudden life does happen, all of those things are going to be impacted. You're going to have to adjust those numbers. Things are going to change. It's going to be a chaotic mess. But if you set the foundation correct, the basics up, all that moats around you, you have insurance protection, you have all these types of things around you. No matter what comes at you, you're in you have a castle, and there's a moat around that castle, and you feel really good. And now it's just a matter of time. And when things are going to happen, life happens. Trust me, it's happened to me many times, as well as anybody here that's listening. You're able to protect that through everything else that you set up as well. And so the automation really comes down to 3 things. If I want to summarize: the bills, the debt pay downs, and the investments.
Got it. Now, before I talk about investments, if people are listening to this and they don't have an emergency fund, what do you recommend? The classic 3 to 6 months expenses?
Yeah, typically I would say that it's really whatever makes you feel comfortable to a certain extent. I go on record all the time. I don't have an emergency fund in the typical sense, if that makes sense. But we did at one point. But once we grew our wealth, we basically put everything in a brokerage account. And I have a YouTube video on exactly what that breakdown is, why we don't have one at this point in time. It's all about liquidity versus cash flow a lot of times. And that's kind of the way we explain it. But for anybody out there listening that's in the process, when we were in the process, we absolutely had a cash emergency fund at that point in time.
Yeah.
But life changes, wealth status changes, the game changes as you change. But typically, yes, 3 to 6 months is a good starting point. I want to be careful about saying anything greater than that. Anything greater than a year is pretty concerning. Tells me there's some scarcity mindset to it. I don't want to keep a lot of cash on hand ever. And so I want to keep enough in case I have an emergency, but I don't want to overfund my emergency fund just to feel safe, because there's not real strategic advantage to that. And a lot of people I work with will have like $100,000, $200,000 in cash sitting there getting eaten by inflation. And they don't even like understand that core concept. I'm like, you guys are spending money on inflation. That's what you're choosing to spend money on.
Your money's losing value.
The dollar is not a hoarding object. It's an exchange of value. And so if you're holding this exchange of value and doing nothing with it, you're losing a lot of money to inflation. So you got to be careful with that. But typically 3 to 6 months is a good rule of thumb.
Okay, got it. And for those people that are in debt right now, are you of the mindset and school of thought, attack that debt ferociously until you pay it off, then start investing? Or would you say, no, even if you have debt, you should be allocating a certain percentage towards investing because of the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest?
Yeah, it's I think both could make a lot of sense. I'm never one to say, hey, pay off all your debt first, then invest. Like I know the Ramsey school of thought's that. I don't prescribe to that. I think the biggest thing is that you have to know yourself and what you're trying to accomplish. Now, if you have credit card debt of 28% interest, you probably should pause all investments and pay that off. It's a basic math equation there.
Agreed.
If you have IRS debt, you don't want them coming for your firstborn. I mean, pay the IRS debt off ASAP.
Yeah.
Outside of that, if it's a low interest debt, I think it's your decision. What do you want out of your life? And so if there makes more strategic advantage to invest that money because you'll get a better return in the market, do that. If you just want to pay off the debt because you've already mapped everything out, you can still hit your goals by doing this first and that second, that's fine. But typically it's a mix of both at the same time.
Got it. Man, I'm going to ask you a selfish question. And I say selfish because I'm curious your thoughts on this. This is a conversation my wife and I are literally having like over the course of the last week. Is we have been debating, and I think we're going to do it. We've been debating hiring a personal family bookkeeper, if that makes sense. Basically, because I've been tracking my net worth for a bit of time now. And it takes me 15, 20 minutes just to like play. And it's something I don't particularly enjoy, but I know the value in it. And I get motivated by seeing my net worth grow month over month, hopefully, right? And even when it comes to like our cash flow, like the money that we're spending, but I was thinking to myself, like, why not just hire similar to, I have a bookkeeper for my different entities, right? And every single month we review the P&L, we review the balance sheet. I'm like, this is stupid. Why don't I just do this for like our household? Yeah. Where do you land on that? Because I understand the idea of automating your debt, your expenses, your investments, pretty simple and easy, right? But when it comes to actually tracking this stuff, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but it takes me a little bit more than 5-10 minutes to like track all this stuff on a monthly basis. Let me ask you,
how long does it take you per month?
I would probably say net worth, P&L, all that, probably about an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay, gotcha. So I guess it's P&L and net worth. So I heard net worth at first. I think it's a smart idea, to be honest. You ask yourself, how much stress does it cause? How much mental bandwidth does it cause? And is that dollar worth it? That's typically how I measure the cost versus value. So based on you asking me that, I think I would do it. Now, here's my thought is that I have a bookkeeper for my P&L on my business. So everything that goes to the business is like, there's a bookkeeper that takes care of that. My personal budget, my personal, net worth, it only takes me about my net worth takes about 15 minutes every quarter. So I actually don't do it every month.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest thing is if you're doing it every month, that's a much more. We do it every quarter because we think on quarter basis. And so if I know quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 of every single year, I can see my trend line just as well as I can see a monthly. And so for me, it's not worth it to update every month. And so on a quarterly basis, we do 15, 20 minutes max to update the balance sheet. And that's pretty simple. But if you're doing this monthly and on top of that, you're doing a P&L, it makes a whole lot of sense to probably outsource.
Okay.
But it comes down to, is it worth it for you? Like, do you think that dollar amount takes care of the stress and time that it goes into it?
Yeah, I already know the answer. For me, it's absolutely for 150 bucks a month or whatever. Yeah, 100%. Got it. Man, I want to address, and I realize this could be a broader topic, and we're going to start to kind of wind down the show here, but to the best of your ability, some quick thoughts. I know with 100% certainty, Brennan, that there's real estate investors that listen to the show and say, hey, I get this, it makes sense, but there's a little bit of friction or resistance from my spouse or significant other, right? Like do you have any suggestions, advice? And again, I realize this is a general question and everyone's relationship is different, but I don't think we have to spend any time talking about the importance of a husband and wife being on the same page about their finances, right?
Yep.
So putting that to the side, how do we get buy-in from our spouse or significant other about like, hey, I realize you like to get your, weekly massage or wherever they, your person likes to spend money, but like getting on on the same page, sacrificing a little bit now so that, you can live the kind of life you want in the future.
We have so many people in the academy that deal with this on coming into the academy. We had this student, Elaine. She never talked to her husband for 25 years about finances. She came into the academy. She did her thing. Her husband bought in. They saw the roadmap and they were amazed. And they started talking about finances after 25 years of their marriage. This is a very common thing. So if you're out there listening and you don't have buy-in from your spouse, don't feel like you're out on an island alone. This happened to me in a sense early on, is that I was more a logical, analytical thinker. I saw the spreadsheets in my mind. My wife does not feel like that. She sees things as she's an art major, previously in sales. She's in sales and art and, creative and stuff like that. I'm a CPA. I'm very detailed. I'm logical. I'm sequence oriented. We just have different ways of looking at money. And so the first thing is I want to point out to the question is like, hey, my wife wants a massage. Like, that shouldn't be the big conversation at first.
Right.
The big conversation should be, what do you guys want as a couple, as a household unit? What are your goals as that? Figure and define that. Understand that females typically see the why, males typically see the what. And that's not, you could go opposite directions as well, but typically that's what happens. That's just how we're wired. And so my wife always saw the why of like, okay, why are we doing all this weird spreadsheet stuff, is what she would say to me. And and I was like, well, we could, you could quit your job. You could retire early. We could do all these sorts of cool things. And she really, really bought in when we started talking about that. But I remember specifically, I came in from my back porch. I was helping my father-in-law with my back porch. And I came in like just spewing like, oh, we got to do this and this and this. And I saw it in my head like a spreadsheet. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I don't want to be involved with whatever you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, when she understood why I was doing the what, she all of a sudden bought in. And it took a few things. It took some time, but it's specifically what I did. I started playing podcasts that were talking about what I would talk about with the outcomes. And she would always love those podcasts. And she'd be like, wow, like that's exactly what I want. Okay, now tell me how to do that. And I'm like, oh, well, I had this really great idea, the what. And that's when I would put it into play. So I'd play podcasts in the car. I'd play podcasts in the house and stuff. We'd be cleaning on a Saturday. Just very casually. I wouldn't force anything. I think forcing it among males often do that amongst female spouses. Like, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. It's like this huge plan in our head, but our spouses don't really see it that way. Yeah. Not that they're not going to be supportive. They just don't see it that way. So I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing is if they don't align and like eventually like you're like, hey, this individual is just going the opposite direction. I hate to say it, but you got to start to ask questions as to why they don't align. You have to understand like, you guys should be moving in the same direction as one the whole entire time. And if you guys are going so opposite of directions, it's not just a money thing, it's a bigger picture thing.
Right.
Because most of this stuff is life goals. This isn't money specifically. It's what do you want out of your life? And are you guys aligned that way? If yes, now we get to the money piece. How do we actually do this from the what perspective? And what does that lifestyle look like? What does that shift look like to align with our bigger goals? And when you understand the big goals, typically the lifestyle stuff is really easy to actually fix. It's more so the big, hairy, scary stuff. When people are in the beginning and they're like, well, you got to cut this to cut that, that's going to create a lot of resistance. That's going to create a lot of problems. Right. And typically I don't advise to just go directly to that. It's understanding the big mission, the whiteboarding exercises. I want to be financially free by 45. I want to do this. And then you guys are really dreaming together. So what's super easy. But yeah, it's a lot of times people come to the reality is that this spouse is not going to be aligned and there's going to be a bigger conversation than the money piece. Yeah.
The big takeaway as I heard it that I want to really like just illuminate for people is women are about the why, men are more about the what, right? And just zoom out big picture versus like the massage was just an example that popped in my mind. But like instead of trying to take away the massage, there's going to be pain and resistance to that. Zoom out, dream together, think big picture. And I think you have a much better chance of getting aligned or realigned versus like, hey, no, you can't have that massage, or hey, we can't, go out to dinner for 3 months or whatever, right? You know what I mean? So
typically it doesn't. I think a lot of people think like that, like the money situation becomes like this absolutely cost-cutting, horrific exercise, and they never do anything because they think it's going to be that. But like most of the time, it's actually not that. It's just realignment.
Yeah, exactly right, man. Well, hey, man, one final question, and I realize it's a big one, but the intention of this question is not to give people like, hey, go invest in this, or like, I can't speak for Brennan. I know, Brennan, you're a CPA. I'm not a CPA. This podcast is not about giving financial advice or anything like that. But more than anything, Brennan, I want to leave people with planting some seeds, right? Because we talked about that example of the $10,000 a month. Ultimately, it's $4,500 over a 20-year period where you're investing on average 10%. The people that listen to this show know real estate. And so my personal opinion is like, invest what you have knowledge and experience in. And there would be something to be said for, I wish I would have started investing in certain things like particular ETFs, right? Like way back when, because of compound interest, and it's working when you're not. Right. So are there any particular types of investments? Obviously we have individual stocks, which are a bit riskier. There's mutual funds, there's ETFs, there's a lot of different things. And I don't claim to be an expert in that domain. I'll kind of defer to you. Just let's plant some seeds with people so that they can at least start to either reach out to you in your community, start to do their own research and homework. Where should people start thinking about investing some of their dollars outside of real estate?
Yeah, there's three main components to this whole entire equation: stocks, real estate, and business. Like if you look at any successful individual that has a lot of money, built a lot of wealth, those are the three domains that they operate within typically. And so that looks different for everybody, right? So obviously you guys do real estate, so I won't hit on that topic. We won't hit on business because a lot of you guys are entrepreneurs. You guys understand business, and whether it's private equity, whether it's your own business, you're good there. From a stock market perspective, I typically would stray away from individual stocks, and I typically would stay within the mutual fund and ETF department. I think that's the easiest way to get into the market. That's also typically the most successful way to stay in the market for the long haul, which is the most important piece of it. And I also think it's very intimidating to a lot of real estate investors. We have individuals that are real estate heavy investors. They think that's the only end all be all. And I think a lot of times if you mix and marry the two, like I have a decent amount of real estate now, and we're continuing to add to that, but we also invest in the stock market as well. I think a lot of times when you understand that the two can marry together, and like all of the lies about the stock market that you've been told, it just comes down to education. But I think if you were to say where to start, I'd say ETF for sure is probably your best bet, followed by mutual funds or index funds in particular. And then keeping it very simple, whatever account you're going to keep this in, right? Depends on the goals of the actual that you have. So 401ks, IRAs, taxable brokerage, and HSAs are the four primary accounts that most individuals in, let's call it average America will have. Mm-hmm. And I think those accounts are going to be stellar for the average person. There's other add-on options. There's other things we can, craft, but I would start with the ETFs or mutual fund index funds in particular within one of those four accounts as a starting point.
Got it. Love it, man. Brennan, dude, it's been awesome having you on, man. I'm glad you and I have started to build a relationship and a friendship. I know we teased on this before, but you and I will absolutely be doing something in the storage realm. It's not an if, it's just a when. So I'm really looking forward to that. But really quick, if you want to do a plug for Budget Dog Academy, and I know we have that free personalized financial training, if you want to just quickly touch on that.
Yeah, so the Budget Dog Academy, guys, is a lifetime program. And that's actually how Alex and I connected. His cousin is in there. So we've done a lot with this over the years. But essentially what this is in a nutshell is figuring out specifically your financial roadmap to financial freedom and finally having that confidence and clarity to everything. We've had, I think, 1,500 people almost at this point in time in the academy. It's success after success after success. And all it is very fundamental stuff, foundational stuff. This is not get rich quick. You can't expect to get in here and all of a sudden just like snap your fingers and get rich. Yeah. It's setting up a plan for the long haul for your family once and for all, and really making sure you have the confidence and clarity to change your life once and for all. That's what we're about. So yeah, that's the Budget Dog Academy in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was super grateful. I had an opportunity to speak to the community about storage, and just a great group of people that are eager to learn, that are just actively helping each other out. I see a lot of accountability. Love the leadership, obviously, with Brennan and the team. So can't say enough great things about it. But guys, with that being said, we're going to put a wrap on this one. Hopefully, I encourage you to rewatch this, re-listen to it, because there's a lot of nuggets, a lot of things Brennan shared. Share this with your spouse or significant other, right? Like, this is one of the things, one of those tips that was kind of like under the radar, is just like, play podcasts in the car, like put it on in the background when you're at home. Like, don't try to like feed it to them, but just have it in your environment. And by the way, if you have kids, we didn't even have an opportunity. Maybe we'll have Brennan on in the future for part 2, but you absolutely need to be discussing money and finances and investing and growing with your kids. If you ask my 9-year-old Ariana about assets and liabilities, within 2 seconds, she can tell you exactly what's an asset, what's a liability. Have those conversations. Like, it's not, don't be shy to do that, because it's so important that we're pouring into our children now. Because I wish I knew what I know now. I wish we had these types of conversations when I was a kid. But anyways, we might leave that for another podcast. But Brennan, really appreciate you, my man. Look forward to continue building a relationship. And guys, make sure that you are subscribed to the Flip Empire show so that you're notified every single Monday morning when new shows get released. So thank you for the support, and we'll catch you on the next one. All right, my friend, I hope you enjoyed that Flip Empire episode and got a lot of value out of it. Make sure to check the show notes page for any resources that were mentioned. And speaking of resources, honestly, I don't think I've done the best job of sharing with you my top curated, highly recommended tools and resources that I use in my business or have used in my business. In some cases, these are affiliate relationships with people that I highly trust and respect, and I know these tools and resources can help you and your business go to the next level. And as an ethical bribe, if you decide to try out one of these resources using my link, I will go ahead and send you an unadvertised bonus. I'll send you something of high value. All you got to do is shoot me an email, alex@flipempire.com. Go ahead and let me know that you that you tried out this resource, and however I can help you getting started with that, chances are that I know it very, very well and currently use it or have used it. So make sure to check that out, flipempire.com/resources. And if I can be of help or service to you in any way, just shoot me an email, alex@flipempire.com, and I will do anything I can for you. Have an amazing day, and I'll catch you on the next show.